once challenged the natural order of the African savanna. One fell in battle, the other was spared and returned to the only home he had left. However, their passage through these lands left an indelible mark, a story that would change the fate of their species forever. The return of the tiger to the reserve was not just an ending, but the beginning of a new era. The scientists, amazed by his survival and the impact he had on the savanna, began to question whether his presence had been more than an anomaly. What if tigers really could coexist in Africa? The idea of releasing more tigers into the savanna, this time with females, so they could reproduce and form their own dynasty, was ambitious, dangerous, and revolutionary. But one thing was certain: the story of these two tigers had not been in vain. They had proven that they were more than mere intruders. They were conquerors, survivors, legends. And perhaps, in the not-so-distant future, the roar of a new lineage of tigers would once again echo across the savanna, signaling the dawn of a new era of predators in Africa. But then, something unexpected happened. The lions did not attack. Instead, the leader of the coalition stepped forward and roared with authority. He stared at the tiger for long seconds and then, in a surprising gesture, allowed him to live. But there was one condition: he had to leave the savanna and never return. The tiger didn't hesitate. Taking the opportunity, he turned and ran without looking back, driven by the instinct to survive. For days, he traveled without rest until he finally reached the border of the reserve from which he had escaped. The researchers were stunned to see the beast return of its own will. His body bore the scars of war, but his spirit remained intact. It was then that they made a momentous decision. If a single tiger had changed the savanna's ecosystem, what would happen if more were released? And what if this time they weren't just males but females too? The idea was ambitious, an unprecedented experiment. Could the African savanna become a new home for tigers? That story would have to wait for another day. And so ended the odyssey of the two tigers who, his body was covered in wounds, but his survival instinct pushed him forward. Every shadow seemed like an ambush. Every breeze carried the scent of death. After hours of fleeing, he found refuge in a dense grove, where the foliage hid his silhouette from the watchful eyes of the coalition. There, exhausted and trembling, he let out a growl of frustration and pain. His reign was over. The savanna, once his domain, once again belonged to the lions. For days, the wounded tiger remained hidden, licking his wounds and regaining strength. The loss of his companion weighed on him like a shadow. Their reign had been short, but devastating. And now, with reality hitting him like an unrelenting storm, he understood he could not stay. At dawn, with golden light filtering through the leaves, the tiger stood up. His muscles still ached, but his warrior spirit had not been completely broken. He looked one last time at the vast savanna, his former kingdom, and with a low growl he said goodbye. He turned on his paws and walked away, vanishing into the thickness of the jungle, in search of a new territory, a new destiny. His story in the savanna had come to an end, but his legend would live on forever. The tiger walked for days, moving further and further away from the area where the lions reigned supreme. However, his luck was about to change. One night, under the silver light of the moon, he once again encountered his old enemies. A patrol of lions had followed his trail. 6 massive males slowly surrounded him. Their eyes shone with a mixture of anger and respect. They had defeated his companion, and now they had the chance to eliminate the last invader of their kingdom. The tiger roared with fury, preparing for his final battle. He knew he stood no chance against so many foes, but he would not fall without a fight. His muscles tensed and his claws dug into the earth, ready for a desperate battle. The flesh of an unsuspecting hyena. In a matter of seconds, the scene turned into a frenzy of claws, fangs, and desperate cries. The surviving hyenas scattered, fleeing in chaos, leaving their fallen companions in the dust. The tigers, their bodies stained with blood, knew their presence in the savannah had now been announced. And this was only the beginning of their rise to absolute dominance. As the moon lit the blood-stained savannah, the tigers advanced without rest. Every shadow could hide a threat, but also an opportunity. They had proven their power against the hyenas, but far greater challenges still lay ahead. Walking through the tall grass, their senses were more alert than ever. The sound of a nearby river drew them in, not only for the need of water but also for the promise of more prey. There, on the riverbank, they found their next opponent, a young crocodile resting near the water. Without hesitation, one of the tigers crept up silently, muscles tense and ready to strike. With a swift leap, it sank its fangs into the scaly neck of the reptile, which barely had time to react before its fate was sealed. The night went on, and with each new encounter, under the sun, although hippos were not typical prey for big cats, the tigers were determined to challenge any obstacle. Patiently, they surrounded the giant beast, waiting for the exact moment to strike. One of the tigers leapt first, clinging to the hippo's back with its sharp claws. The beast roared in fury, shaking violently. But the other tiger was already prepared. With a calculated jump, it sank its fangs into the animal's neck. The struggle was brutal, but the tigers, with their lethal strategy, managed to bring down the colossus of the savannah. With their confidence at its peak, the tigers sought their next challenge. In the distance, a young giraffe moved awkwardly through the vegetation. Despite its size, it was vulnerable. Moving stealthily, the tiger stalked it, waiting for the right moment. And when it came, they struck with precision, bringing down the towering creature in a masterful hunt. Their reign over the savannah was becoming more evident. The tigers stalked a young solitary lion, a naive male who had strayed too far from his pride. It was a unique opportunity. They attacked with precision, ambushing him in the tall grass. Despite his fierceness, the lion stood no chance against the combined strength and strategy of the tigers. In a matter of minutes, the battle was over, but the dying roar of the lion echoed across the savannah. The lion coalition, alerted, quickly assembled. They were not 2 or 3 but over 6 powerful males. With a coordinated strategy, they surrounded the tigers. It was not a fair fight. The tigers fought fiercely, but the lion's superior numbers soon became evident. One of the tigers was caught by several males and, after a desperate struggle, fell under the strength of his enemies. The other, seeing defeat as inevitable, had no choice but to flee. The surviving tiger ran with all his might, zigzagging through the underbrush while the roars of the lions thundered behind him. His paws burned with pain. The tigers reaffirmed their dominance over the savannah. Soon, word of their presence would reach the ears of the true rulers of these lands, the lions. And when that moment came, the war for control of the savannah would be inevitable. Dawn found the tigers resting atop a rocky hill, overlooking the vast stretch of land before them. The cool morning air carried new scents. Herds of antelope grazing in the distance, elephants lumbering between scattered trees, and most importantly, the unmistakable trace of lions. The tigers knew that sooner or later they would cross paths. Roars echoed in the distance, marking territory. The kings of the savannah still had no idea that intruders were challenging their reign. But these tigers were not mere invaders, they were conquerors. Moving silently, they began to track a group of lions. It was a small pride with a dominant male, 2 lionesses, and their cubs. The tigers watched from the underbrush, studying their movements. They would not attack yet. First, they needed to understand their enemy. The lions were relaxed, unaware of the imminent threat. The male yawned beneath the shade of an acacia tree while the lionesses tended to their young. Then, a sound in the tall grass caught the pride's attention. The male stood immediately, muscles tense, eyes fixed on the direction of the noise. But there was nothing, only the wind. Or so they thought. The tigers, masters of solitary hunting, knew how to use patience to their advantage. They would not rush into a frontal attack. Not yet. They knew the key to the hunt was the perfect opportunity. And when it came, the savannah would meet a new alpha predator. Fate led the tigers to a calm lake, where the water reflected the sky like a mirror. There, a solitary hippopotamus emerged from the depths, its thick skin glistening. In the heart of South Africa, in a protected reserve designed exclusively for the conservation of tigers, 2 of these formidable predators did the unthinkable. They were not content with the boundaries imposed by humans nor with a life of captivity. Even though the reserve was vast and full of easy prey, no, these tigers were different. Their instincts were too wild, their thirst for freedom too great. And so, on a moonless night, they disappeared into the shadows, escaping the walls that contained them. What no one imagined was that these 2 striped titans would forever change the balance of the African savannah. With unmatched strength and a ferocity never before seen in those lands, they began their reign of terror and dominance. They entered a world where they did not belong, a world ruled by lions, hyenas, and crocodiles. But they were not prey, nor were they willing to submit. From the first day of their arrival, these tigers unleashed chaos. They attacked with deadly precision, ambushed the kings of the savannah, and claimed territories never before touched by their kind. Lions fell, hyena packs were decimated, and even the feared hippos felt the slash of their claws. The savannah had never seen anything like it. This is the story of 2 beasts that defied the natural order, that transformed an entire ecosystem with their presence. A story of blood, power, and survival. A story the African savannah will never forget. Their journey began under a starry sky. After escaping the reserve, they ventured into the vast savannah, a world completely unknown to them. The air smelled of dust and danger, and the night sounds were different from those of their former home. But they felt no fear. In their eyes burned the thrill of the challenge. The first obstacle came quickly. As they moved stealthily through the tall grass, a group of hyenas spotted them. Curious, the hyenas approached, thinking they were harmless felines, perhaps leopards out of place. But when the tigers revealed their true size, the hyenas realized their mistake. Even so, they did not back down. In the savannah, numbers usually determined the winner of a fight. The tigers did not wait to be attacked. With a roar that had never echoed through those plains, the first tiger launched at the leader of the pack, knocking her down with overwhelming force. The other tiger followed, slashing through the chaos,